In the first days, I think police believed that they were dealing with a domestic violence situation.
I hit him on the head. With a brick on my right hand.
Anybody who was at the scene felt there was an element of overkill.
I hit him until I considered the threat to be over. And when I considered the threat to be over, I quit hitting him.
The police realised that they were dealing with something much more.
You know, if somebody's making allegations, you have to ask for proof. And there was no proof ever forthcoming.
Tom Martens said he's wearing a red t-shirt, but you can clearly see there's blood stains on it.
Molly Martens, not a mark, not a bruise in comparison to Jason Corbett, who is beaten to death.
The aim for every journalist is to get to the truth. News is something that somebody somewhere doesn't want published or doesn't want revealed. And sometimes the truth can be very elusive.
Davidson County 911, what is the address of your emergency?
My name is Tom Martens. I'm at 160 Panther Creek Court, and we need help.
There were 6 people staying in the house that night. Jason Corbett and his second wife Molly. Molly's parents, Tom and Sharon Martens, who were staying over. And Jason's 2 children from his first marriage, Jack, who was 10, and Sarah, who was aged 8.
What's going on there?
My daughter's husband, my son-in-law, got in a fight with my daughter. I intervened, and I think he's in bad shape. We need help.
Okay, what do you mean he's in bad shape? He's hurt?
He's bleeding all over, and I may have killed him.
I've listened to the 911 call, I'd say probably about a dozen times.
What is your name?
My name is Tom Martens.
Was he drinking?
Yes, he had been drinking during the course of the day.
Is he conscious at all?
No.
Is he breathing?
I can't tell.
Literally, the hair would stand on the back of your neck.
All right, so we're going to start CPR. All right, I need you to make sure that his mouth and nose are clear.
It's a mess.
I'll set a pace for you. 1, 2, 3, 4. When he gets to 200 pumps, you're going to take over.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Keep pumping.
2, 3, 4.
Paramedics were on the scene within, I think, about 10 minutes.
Looks like I've got lights here. They're coming in now.
Oh, just keep pumping. Y'all did a good job.
Tom and Molly were taken for questioning to the police station to make statements.
We're fighting.
Okay, who's fighting?
My husband.
Okay, is that a normal thing?
Yes.
So there's a history of domestic violence at the house?
Yes.
He was abusive.
Was Jason drinking this evening?
Yeah. Yes.
Would you say that you thought he was drunk?
Yes, he was drunk. He choked me because he wanted me to shut up, and I screamed.
So I opened the bedroom door, and he's got Molly by the throat. And I hit him. I hit him with the baseball bat. And he reaches out and he grabs the bat, and he's stronger than I am. And he pushes me down, and I'm scrambling on the floor, and the glasses fall off. Now I'm thinking, he's gonna kill me.
I hit him on the head.
You hit on the head with what?
With a brick on my right hand.
goes down.
You know your husband didn't survive his injuries, right?
I didn't think so.
No, he didn't survive his injuries. At this point, after talking to your dad and talking to you, it looks like this is going to be self-defense, okay? I don't think that there's going to be an issue with that.
We have two different alternate stories for the events of that evening. We have the version from Tom and Molly Martens, and then we have the other version, which is based on largely forensic evidence from the scene.
Davidson County 911, what is the address of your emergency?
I was immediately struck by the calm demeanour of Tom Martens on that call.
Give me your address again, make sure I got it right.
160
Enter
Creek Court.
It's quite chilling to hear how calm he was talking to the dispatcher.
What is your name?
My name is Tom Martens.
Both Tom and Molly Martens were trained in CPR, but they hadn't started CPR on Jason Corbett until they were told to do so.
I'm certified. I just can't think.
Okay, you have to stay calm. Let your training take over.
1, 2, 3, 4.
The paramedics arrived to find a horrendous scene. Blood on the walls of the hallway. The bedroom was blood-soaked. A lamp had been knocked over. There was a concrete paving slab in the middle of the floor. There was a metal baseball bat, a Louisville Slugger, which had blood stains on it. Jason Corbett was unclothed, lying on the floor and unresponsive. The police officers attended with the paramedics, and their first priority was to secure the scene.
Corporal Dagenhart, the first police officer on site, to him, blood from a body would be normally runny, but he noticed that the blood had started to dry and that it was congealed. He said it was like jello or jelly.
The paramedics said that Jason Corbett's body was cold to the touch, or cool to the touch. Tom and Molly Martens were escorted out of the property. Molly twice had to be warned at the scene by different police officers to stop rubbing her neck. They realised that there were two children asleep upstairs.
Corporal Dagenhart, he said that he had gone upstairs to the two children. He woke Sarah up and he said he lifted her into his arms and he told her to close her eyes, because he had seen there was a trail of blood going all the way from the master bedroom out the front door. He cupped her head in his hand and he led her down the stairs, and she was looking back up at her brother. Another colleague was doing the same, and he said to her, "Don't worry, he's okay."
The paramedics never once got a cardiac rhythm. I didn't know Jason Corbett personally, but from talking to his family, his friends, neighbours, people he went to school with, he does come across as a remarkable, a sound Irishman. Not your typical Irishman in some ways. I mean, one of the things that struck me about him was that he was quite a romantic man and wasn't afraid to show that. Jason met his first wife, Mags, and it really was love at first sight for both of them, and they got married in 2003. In November of 2006, Mags got an asthma attack, and tragically she was pronounced dead at University Hospital Limerick that evening. He had tremendous support from his family, but I think Jason, being the guy that he was, certainly from all his family members, what they said was that he didn't want to be a burden, that he wanted to sort out his life, to put his life on a more permanent footing. And he saw the way to do that was to have au pairs. So he had a number of au pairs. I think they were mostly from either Eastern Europe or from Spain. A language seemed to be an issue, but I think greater concern was they were always short term. And out of the blue, he got a contact from a woman from Tennessee called Molly Martens.
I first started working on the story in August 2015. I'd come in contact with an ex-boyfriend of Molly Martens, Keith McGinn.
The first time I met her, I was just floored because she was stunning. To her credit, she did tell me early on that she had bipolar. She was no longer able to work or anything. She pretty much couldn't keep a job. She couldn't do the nannying stuff anymore. I think we had been together around a year and we got engaged. So then she told me one night that she was gonna look for jobs nannying in Europe. And I thought, man, here we go again. One of her crazy ideas. She said, hey, I'm gonna go in Ireland. She told me, I think initially she was gonna be gone for like a week. And then I think it might've been like 10 days before I heard anything. I knew she was not in a good mental state whatsoever. I didn't know how safe it was for her to be going over and nannying for somebody's children. We had just been in a psych ward, so I knew she wasn't in a mental state to do it. So she finally emailed and said, sorry for not calling you, but I also don't know if I'm ever coming back. I need to move on. What I found out later was that not only did I not exist when she went to Ireland, but she and Jason started a relationship very quickly.
I don't think Jason knew for quite some period of time the exact extent of Molly's mental health issues. By then, they were involved in a relationship and she was caring for the children. And I don't think a relationship was something that he had planned on. But I think what he certainly hadn't planned on was the speed with which the relationship went from casual to very serious. And then they got engaged. In 2011, Jason had relocated to North Carolina, and he did that very much on the basis that Molly complained of being homesick, of being unable to settle in Limerick. The Molly that the family met in the States for the time of the June 2011 wedding was a very different person to the Molly that they had known in Limerick for the previous 2 years. Molly was prone to exaggeration. Molly would tell untruths. She would invent stories about herself.
She would tell the most blatant lies, and I'd point out to her that she just said the exact opposite thing like an hour before that. So one of them had to be wrong. Saying that she was friends with Jason's former wife who had died tragically anyway. I mean, it's just amazing. The lies that she would say and think that people were gonna believe. It's mind-boggling.
The tragedy of it is that the family only began to realize the scale of Molly's untruths, lies, fabrications when the wedding was effectively underway. Having said that, one of Jason's friends did go to him, believe it or not, on the day of the wedding and said, look, you can still walk away. It's still not too late. But Jason effectively said, no, I have to. I can't do it to the kids. Tom Martens maintained that Jason had given a wedding commitment that he would allow Molly to adopt the 2 children, which would give her equal rights. Jason would never sign those papers. Just a couple of weeks after the June 2011 wedding, Molly went to a divorce lawyer, and the purpose for that visit was solely to ascertain her rights to the children.
Perhaps it would be helpful if I just kind of launched into a story. Because it will contribute to my state of mind.
Tom Martens, in his interviews hours after Jason Corbett has been murdered so brutally, he's very much controlled after such a chaotic scene has played out only hours earlier.
For me, the importance of covering this story is to get to the truth of it, to get behind what was said in those police interviews and what was alleged. So Tom Martens had spent around 30 or so years as an FBI agent. He moved around a lot.
My career was criminal. The second half of my career was counterintelligence.
He's trying to associate himself with the police officers, like they're one and the same. And he sets out the scene for them. And within 2 minutes, he has suggested that Jason Corbett has been involved in killing his first wife. As in, he says that she died in mysterious circumstances.
His first wife died in mysterious circumstances. The finding was that she had an asthma attack in his car. She died of asphyxiation.
And he also uses the word asphyxiation, which could be seen as a criminal term, when in fact her death certificate in Limerick shows clearly that she died of asthma attack.
Molly is much less controlled than her father.
I don't know. Can we stop? You said we could stop.
Okay. How many times did you get Jason?
I don't know.
Okay, you don't remember?
I don't know.
Okay.
I should have screamed.
And she looks very little girl lost. But she's got her story quite straight, and her story is very similar at the same time to the one that's playing out in the next room.
I've never told them about any physical abuse, but I've told them about verbal abuse and mental and emotional.
And I don't think she told us everything. But he was very controlling and abusive.
I thought actually the police officer lady who's interviewing her, she very quickly cops that she's rubbing her neck all the time.
Why do you keep grabbing your neck?
I'm sorry. It hurts.
But as she examines her, she's finding nothing.
We're going to get some pictures and see if we can find any injuries.
Molly Martens, not a mark, not a bruise, no swelling. And she had a very fine bracelet on her that night, still intact, a hair clip still intact. There was not a mark on Tom Martens.
Tom Martens, he's wearing a red t-shirt, but you can clearly see there's blood stains on it.
There was a lot of disparity in terms of the lack of injuries on the two defendants in comparison to Jason Corbett, who is beaten to death.
A forensics officer arrived, and what they began doing at that stage then was photographing the scene. The scene was also videotaped. And then the forensic officers began taking their samples. Primarily from the bedroom, and with the focus being on the bloodstain patterns through the bedroom. And also on the two apparent weapons that had been used.
Anybody who was at the scene, veteran detectives who had covered murders before, all felt there was an element of overkill.
So I open the bedroom door, and he's got Molly by the throat, like this. And he sees me come in, and he goes around her throat, like I said, let her go. And he started to drag her toward the bathroom. When I hit him, it was like it just turned on a switch.
I hit him on the head.
You hit him on the head with what?
With the brick on my nightstand.
Okay, so you have a brick on the nightstand?
Yeah.
What was that for?
The kids and I we were gonna paint these bricks and
Like a decorative thing?
Bearing in mind that Molly Martens is in a police cell being questioned about the brutal death of her husband. Her father has beaten her husband to death in front of her, and she's distraught. She still manages to put together the fact to the police that she's concerned about the children.
I'm scared they'll try to take the kids.
You guys are legally married?
Yes.
Did you adopt one of the children?
No.
Okay, then that's a real possibility.
Oh. Oh, God.
You can see that she definitely believes that she has this absolutely huge connection.
Within 24 to 48 hours of Jason's death, Molly had started not just a custody battle, but she was also pushing for a formal adoption declaration. So that immediately set in motion a major legal battle for custody and guardianship of the two children.
The courtroom's doors closed and locked. Signs posted, the custody hearing in what courthouse staff says is a rare move, closed to the public. But inside, attorneys say is a discussion over custody and what happened the night Jason Corbett died.
We attended the custody hearing for the Corbett children. But that was the first time I saw Molly Martens in the flesh. Then you had Tracy and her husband David. And the atmosphere was extremely tense. You could feel the tension in the air at that hearing.
There was some disparaging remarks regarding Molly and the relationship. And there was disparaging remarks brought up by Molly towards Jason.
Tracy had brought Jason's will over, which said that in the event of his death, herself and her husband were to be appointed guardians of both the children.
In the will, Jason expressed that he wished for a guardian to be his sister and her husband. And so in North Carolina, the law states that we should give that great weight. We don't have to follow it, but we should give that great weight. And in this situation, not only was it his wishes, but it was what I felt was in the children's best interest.
I went to see the judge on the Tuesday, and he said that he had made the decision to give the children back to the Corbetts.
I called the attorneys together to announce my decision in chambers, and I ordered the attorneys not to disclose this decision until the children were in the custody of the Davidson County Department of Social Services. And Davidson County Department of Social Services was ordered to go to get the children and to deliver them to the Lynch family. At the time that I made my decision, the children were allowed to talk with DSS in the room, were allowed to talk to Molly at some point in time. There was no doubt in my mind then, and 5-6 years later, there's still no doubt that I made the correct decision.
Both children were in the house the night their father died, and the police were keen to speak to them. The interviews had taken place in the days after their father's killing.
Tom and Molly Martens were maintaining they acted in self-defence. The police went to social services to have a chat with Jack and Sarah.
The children, in particular Jack, did make a number of statements about his father, about witnessing physical abuse in the house. Sarah had said that, you know, her dad would get angry at times.
Those statements are flatly contradicted and retracted by statements that the children made just a couple of weeks later when they returned to Ireland.
They said that they had been coached about what to say, that, you know, somebody was coming from Ireland to take them away from their home, from the school they'd gone to, from their friends, and that if they didn't say these things about their father, that, you know, all of that would change.
In the first days, I think police believed that they were dealing with a domestic violence situation which had a tragic outcome. But I think when they started to get the results back of the forensic tests, of the pathology tests, of the medical assessment of Tom and Molly, the police realised that they were dealing with something much more.
The autopsy showed that he died from blunt head trauma. There was also some injuries to his hand, and there was an injury to his torso.
Craig Nelson, who was the pathologist, said that the injuries were so severe and so repeated that he couldn't accurately count the number of blows that were suffered to Jason's skull. The indications were that blows were repeatedly struck to the same spot.
Tom Martens gave a very detailed explanation for the baseball bat.
My son, my third child, was a baseball player. So he's got all kinds of gear in our garage. And Jack is 10 years old, and he's been playing baseball. So I brought him a bat, kid's bat.
And he said that the child had come in from a party very late that night and he hadn't time to give it, so the baseball bat was sitting in his room.
The metal baseball bat was soaked in Jason's blood and hair. The concrete paving slab was found to be embedded with Jason's blood, hair, and even his tissue.
Bear in mind that both Tom and Molly Martens, in their interviews directly after Jason had been killed, said he'd spent the day drinking.
He sat in the driveway and drank all afternoon.
He was on this afternoon, and he started drinking after that.
Would you say that she thought he was drunk?
Yes, he was drunk.
But the toxicology report showed that he had a minimal amount of alcohol in his blood, and that he also had a small trace of a sleeping pill.
There was this low-level sleep-inducing drug called trazodone found in Jason Corbett's bloodstream.
Molly had got a tranquilizer prescription a couple of days before Jason's death, and traces of that tranquilizer were found in his system. And his family certainly believe that they got into his system from a drink, a mint mojito, that he was offered that evening by his wife.
So the police also got Jason Corbett's medical records, and in one of the doctor's visits he had said that he was feeling that he was getting angry for no reason. Now this could tie in with accounts from family members in the aftermath of his death that they felt he was being gaslighted by Molly.
The behaviour between June 2011 and Jason's death in August 2015 was quite extraordinary. I had never heard the phrase gaslighting. I mean, he was belittled in public by her, and there were lots of problems in the house. I mean, she maintains that there was a domestic abuse situation, and that's why she had recording devices hidden all over the house. She She had recording devices under the seats of his car. She had recording devices in the bedroom. She had recording devices in the hallway.
Have you ever called the police about it before?
No, because the children are not biologically mine. And they're not citizens. And so he could take them away.
Have you ever told anybody before tonight that you were being physically abused?
I didn't say any of it. I didn't tell him about it being physical.
Okay.
No, I said it was with us that he doesn't hurt the kids.
Molly has made a lot of allegations about Jason Corbett. He had choked her, he had attempted to strangle her, that she'd passed out at one point. I didn't know anything about Molly Martens, didn't know anything about Jason Corbett. And to me at the time, and it still is the obvious question, was, has there been any reports of domestic abuse in this house at any point? That initial meeting I had with Sheriff Grice, I asked him, have you been called out to this house? Are there hospital records? I asked him that on that first day and he said no. And I asked him again and he took in one of his detectives and he said absolutely not. There's been no call outs, no evidence that we found that there's any history of domestic abuse in this house.
On the day before his death, one of the children, Jack, is adamant that he saw a suitcase in the house. And Sarah, she saw her father working on his home computer. And his sister Tracy is adamant that he was researching flights to bring himself and his 2 children home to Ireland within the next 24 to 36 hours. The police found no sign of a packed bag in the house. And Jason's home computer has never been found.
Jason and another neighbour had been out that evening on the lawn, on the drive. They'd had a few drinks and everything seemed normal in the house.
Then, out of the blue, Molly's parents arrived. Now, it was a totally unscheduled visit. Jason wasn't aware of it. There were multiple phone calls made by Molly to her parents in the 24 hours before they arrived at the house. The minute Jason saw his father-in-law and mother-in-law arriving, he got up, he walked over to their car, he took their suitcases out of the boot of the car and escorted them into the house.
Tom Martin said that when they arrived, they'd ordered pizza and Tom himself had a couple of drinks and that Sharon Martens had brought some mint and that Molly made mojitos.
And then suddenly, minutes after 3 a.m, a 911 call was made.
Davidson County 911, what is the address of your emergency?
He's bleeding all over and I may have killed him.
I'm certified. I just can't think. 1, 2, 3, 4.
The police concluded their investigation. Their investigation included the blood spatter evidence from Dr. Stuart James. It included the forensic pathology report by Dr. Craig Nelson. It also included an analysis of all of the photographs at the scene taken by the police. And the belief was that the Martin story just didn't add up to the forensics, to the actual hard evidence of the scene. And the district attorney felt that there was enough evidence for a charge.
By all accounts, I think Tom Martens and his daughter were absolutely stunned that they were being charged. I don't think they ever thought that we were going to be charged. No, they didn't. This was self-defence. This is an open and shut case. Nothing to see here. There was a huge sense of anticipation for this trial, and there was a huge interest in it. 2 people's liberty was at stake. Allegations were flying between parties. A lot of the forensic evidence was already out there.
I watched the jury very carefully. They were a very good jury, like they paid pretty rapt attention to all of the detail, the forensics, the evidence that was being given. The blood pattern expert was very, very central to the prosecution case of explaining what had happened in the bedroom that night.
And one of the significant things he said in particular was to do with blood spatter and saturation stains on the bed sheets and the box springs of the bed. And he had said that that showed that there was an impact incident there on the bed. This was where the first blow occurred.
I hit him on the head.
You hit him on the head with what?
With a brick on my guy's hand.
There were a number of cast-off blood stains on the hall that leads from the master bedroom into the bathroom. And they showed that, you know, as the bat was being swung, the blood was flying off onto the walls. And that tied in with Tom Martens' version of events in that Jason had retreated back down that hallway with Molly in this chokehold, and that he was going after him with the bat.
Some of the blows that Jason suffered were post-mortem. So in other words, he was beaten even after he was dead. There was also blood on the underwear of Tom Martens, which the forensic blood spattern expert said that it showed that he was standing above Jason Corbett. If you're standing above someone, if they're prone on the ground, what threat do they pose to you?
During the trial, I sat at the back of the courtroom so I could get a good view of the jury and how they reacted to all of those photos of Jason Corbett's body. And it started quite low, but there was kind of like, you know, this retching sound had started to rise up from within the jury box when those pictures were being shown, and it started to get louder and louder until eventually the bailiff ran in with a bin and one of the jurors threw up. Such was the graphic nature of what was on display.
Sure. I had seen these images, and we made the decision that they were just too graphic and too upsetting to use, particularly because of the upset I think they would have caused the family.
Without seeing these, and they're very graphic, so you don't see them for a reason, you know, outside of the courtroom, they point to the sheer ferocity of force that's used. I have covered a lot of murder trials, both in Ireland and abroad, and you do see graphic crime scene photos. In terms of damage done, never ever have I seen anything like this, and I'll never ever forget it, never.
I certainly felt he would kill me. I felt both of our lives were in danger.
There didn't seem to be an awful lot of emotion or regret that things could have been different.
Once I got control of the bat, I hit him until I considered the threat to be over. And when I considered the threat to be over, I quit hitting him.
Molly didn't take the stand. She chose not to, as is her right under the law.
She was interested in doing interviews at various points where she could talk about these allegations. As a journalist, if somebody's making allegations, you have to ask for proof. And there was no proof ever forthcoming. And to me, the proper forum for all of that would have been a courtroom where all of those allegations could have properly been tested, and where her credibility and reliability as a witness could have been put to the test. And it was interesting that she didn't do that, that her forum was primetime TV. The prosecution closing speech was incredible.
How much force does it take to split the flesh all the way to the skull? You know what malice feels like from the brick that Molly had? It feels like I hate him, and I want those kids. That's what malice feels like.
The jury are almost upright in their seats, and from there then, you know, he goes over to Molly and he points at her and he said, she killed him with the brick. And he walks over to Tom and he said, and he killed him with the bat.
Everybody gets excited when you hear a knock on the jury door. I remember looking down and I had my iPad about to start typing and my hands were actually shaking.
And it was incredibly tense. You know, you can feel the tension in the air, and, you know, your own heart, you know, you got the phone ready to text the result back to Ireland.
Good evening. A jury has returned a unanimous guilty verdict in the trial of a father and daughter accused of the second-degree murder of Limerick man Jason Corbett. The former FBI agent Thomas Martens and his daughter Molly, who was married to Mr. Corbett, had denied the charge, claiming self-defence. Jason's wife Molly and his father-in-law Thomas Martens are spending their first full days behind bars after being sentenced to a minimum of 20 years in jail for his murder.
We worried the jury might not find the two accused guilty, but they did, and we thank them for it. We thank them for the sad vindication of Jason.
This is the most atrocious miscarriage of justice I've ever been a part of. Thank you.
It's not a celebration. It's just a bit of closure, and those people are being held responsible for what they did to my twin brother.
Tom Martens went to a high security prison. By all accounts, he was a model prisoner. He had a job as a janitor at one point. When Molly was in prison, she had broken the rules a couple of times, not following guidelines, being in possession of non-lethal contraband, to the point where her visitation rights were removed.
In most cases, a conviction marks the end of a story, but that was far from the case here. Judge David Lee, when he opened the trial, he took the view that the two statements, the children's statements, there were two mutually contradictory sets of statements, and he thought the fairest thing to do was to omit both.
Look at the setting of which the children gave the statement initially, talking to DSS workers who are specifically trained to detect individuals who are giving them testimony.
Molly and Tom Martens' lawyers are pushing for a retrial and say statements made by Jack and Sarah Corbett to social services should be admissible as evidence.
The judges on the Supreme Court ruled that the Dragonfly statements would have been central or very important to their defence, and that by not allowing them into evidence, the defence's case had been restricted or unfairly compromised.
The appeals court has overturned the trial, and the trial judge's decision said the trial judge's decisions were wrong, and a number of the decisions of not allowing evidence in meant that they couldn't get a fair trial.
Molly and her father Thomas Martens have been released on bail after the courts overturned their murder convictions.
I was absolutely stunned that they were out. Absolutely stunned.
While I knew it was very possible they were going to get out, those images of them walking free from jail were very poignant. I really felt for Jason's family.
With her possessions in a paper bag, Molly Martens left jail and did not speak to weighty media. The 37-year-old and her 71-year-old father, Thomas Martens, had been in prison less than 4 years.
Jason Corbett's family say his orphaned teenage children are willing to give evidence at a retrial for the Limerick man's murder in the United States.
The issue with the statements is the truthfulness of them. The only people who can speak to the truth of them are the children. They'll have the opportunity, it seems, to come to court and give their truthful version of what happened. That'll be tested in a court of law, and it'll be up to a jury to decide which statements do you take as truth. Can I just say one more thing, if you don't mind? There had been 4 adults in the house that night. Her mother Sharon was there that night.
Where was your mom when this was going on?
In my room.
She did not leave the bedroom. She did not ring 911.
Would you not be running up the stairs to check the safety of your husband and your daughter?
There was a life and death struggle. There must have been loud sounds of bangs.
It's very, very strange to sit downstairs and do absolutely nothing.
Sharon Martens was never questioned. To me, that's amazing. She was still an adult witness in the house, within the house, not just in the area, in the house. The police didn't interview her, so that is really on them.